Hello, and welcome back to the Egyptophile podcast. I'm your host, Eris, and this week we will be discussing one of my favorite pharaohs, Hatshepsut, a woman so headstrong and confident that her own country tried to erase her existence. But why would they do this? And how much of an impact did she make on Egypt? Well, to answer these questions, we must first delve into her past. Hatshepsut was the only surviving child of Thutmose I and his great royal wife, Ahmose. Fun fact, Thutmose I is the first confirmed tomb builder in the Valley of the Kings. As Thutmose I's sole legitimate heir, Hatshepsut should have been able to reign in Egypt in her own right. However, even with Egypt being a somewhat equal country, a pharaoh had to be a male. Because of this, Hatshepsut was married off to her half brother, Thutmose II, when her father passed around 1493 BCE. Thutmose II's reign was brief. It is undetermined how long this reign was, but it is estimated to have been either a 13-year reign or a 3-year reign. Regardless of the length of his reign, he sired two children, one with Hatshepsut, named Neferue, and another with a minor wife, Iset, Thutmose III. Because of Thutmose III's age when his father died, Hatshepsut would step in as regent, and her birthright reign would begin. Around 1472 BCE, Hatshepsut would step into the role of queen regnant alongside Thutmose III, and even backdated her ascension as pharaoh to the first year of Thutmose III's reign, when she had only been merely a regent. While other queens, like Queen Sobeknefru and even possibly Nitocrasis, have assumed the pharaoh role, Hatshepsut is the only female ruler to do so in a time of prosperity, and even had more power than her female predecessors. Hatshepsut's reign is believed to have been around 22 years, including her regency and reign as queen regnant. However, dating the starting of her reign has been difficult for scholars due to the length of both Thutmose I and Thutmose II's reign. With no one knowing how long the Thutmoses reigned, Hatshepsut's reign could have started either 14 years after her father's coronation, or it could have started 25 years after her father's coronation. Regardless of when she ascended the throne, she was certainly pharaoh in her own right by 1471 BCE during the Punt expedition. The Punt expedition is one of Hatshepsut's most known accomplishments. Her delegation to Punt brought to Egypt 31 live myrrh trees and other luxurious items such as frankincense. Hatshepsut would make coal eyeliner out of charred frankincense, which is the first recorded use of this resin. This expedition would be commemorated in Hatshepsut's mortuary temple of Dir el Bahri, with a famous realistic depiction of Queen Ati of Punt. Hatshepsut also sent raiders to Byblos and the Sinai Peninsula shortly after the Punt expedition, though not much is known about these expeditions. Many Egyptologists claim Hatshepsut's foreign policies were mainly peaceful, but she is believed to have led military campaigns against Nubia and Canaan. Hatshepsut is also known for her major construction projects through Upper and Lower Egypt. Following her predecessors, she had monuments built at the Temple of Karnak, restored the original precinct of Mut at Karnak, which had been ravaged during the Hyksos occupation, and even had two twin obelisks erected at the entrance to the temple, which were the tallest in the world during their time period. Only one of these obelisks remains standing and is the second tallest ancient obelisks to still exist. She would later order the construction of 2 more obelisks to celebrate the 16th year of her rule. But one of these obelisks broke during construction, so a third had to be ordered. This obelisk was left at a quarrying site in Aswan, where it remains to this day. It is known as the unfinished obelisk and provides evidence into how obelisks were quarried. Hatshepsut also built the Temple of Pakhet at Beni Hassan in the Mina government south of Al-Mina. This underground temple was built into the rock side of cliffs on the eastern side of the Nile and was admired during the Ptolemaic dynasty. They viewed Pakhet as similar to the goddess Artemis. However, Hatshepsut's well-known project was her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. The architect behind this beautiful temple is unknown. However, it is believed to have been Senenmut, overseer of the works, or even the high priest Apsuneb. During her reign, Hatshepsut would assume all regalia and symbols that were accustomed to the pharaonic office. She would wear the cat headcloth, the traditional false beard, and the shet kilt. In many of her statues and monuments, she would appear as ambiguous and androgynous. And she would even create a masculine version of herself to establish in the Egyptian patriarchy. In the Assyrian statues, she is depicted as Osiris, with the body and regalia of the deity Osiris. Priests would go on to tell a story of her divine birth, which would further lay her claim to the throne. In this myth, Amun visits Amos in the form of Thutmose I and proceeds to have sex with her. This results in Hatshepsut's conception, and the god Khnum to create Hatshepsut's body and Ka. The goddess Heket and Khnum would then lead Amos to a place where she would give birth to Hatshepsut. The oracle of Amun would even proclaim that it was Amun's will that Hatshepsut became pharaoh, which further the strength in her position. After her ascension, Hatshepsut would even support her assertion as her father's sole heir by putting inscriptions on the walls of her mortuary temple. In these inscriptions, she would state that her father appointed her as his successor, and that the nobles, dignitaries, and even leaders of people should hear the proclamation of the promotion of Hatshepsut. The last dated attestation of Hatshepsut's reign as pharaoh is around May 22nd, 1459 BCE. Her exact day of death is unknown, but her tomb had begun construction during her marriage to Thutmose II. However, the scale of her tomb was not appropriate for her status as pharaoh, so when she ascended to the throne, another burial tomb was started. KV 20, Kings Valley 20, had originally been constructed for Hatshepsut's father, Thutmose I. It became extended with a new burial chamber. Hatshepsut would also refurbish her father's burial to prepare for a double interment of both Thutmose and herself, so it is likely that she was buried with her father. However, Thutmose III had a new tomb, KV 38, Kings Valley 38, constructed with fresh burial equipment for his grandfather, which meant that Thutmose I was relocated from his original tomb and buried elsewhere. Around this same time, it is possible that Hatshepsut's mummy was relocated to the tomb of her nurse, Sitir, in KV 60, Kings Valley 60. However, this could have been motivated by Amenhotep II, Thutmose III's son, from a secondary wife, in order to try and secure his uncertain claim to the throne. This motivation sparked what would become the attempt to eradicate Hatshepsut from the historical record. Not only was her mummy moved from its initial place of burial, but her cartouches and images were chiseled off stone walls. These methods ranged from full destruction of her name to being replaced with either Thutmose I or Thutmose II's name, where her name once was. There are also instances of smoothing patchwork jobs over her cartouche, with one example being in Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. Her statues at Deir el-Bahari were even torn down, often being smashed or disfigured before being buried in a pit. Attempts were even made at Karnak to cover up her monuments. And while it is evident that most of this rewriting of her history occurred close to Thutmose III's reign, we are still unsure as to why it happened, other than to manifest typical self-promotion that existed amongst pharaohs and their administrators, or to even save money by not building monuments after Thutmose III's burial by just using Hatshepsut's grand structures. It is often suspected that Amenhotep II is the defacer, due to his lineage as pharaoh not being as strong as Hatshepsut's was. Amenhotep's reign is marked with various attempts to break with royal lineage. There is no record of his queens, which eliminated the powerful titles and official roles of the royal women, such as God's wife of Amun. Thankfully, most of these titles were restored during the reign of his son, Thutmose IV. Many scholars, however, believe that the attempt to erase Hatshepsut was simply caused by political necessity, to assert Thutmose III's beliefs that only men could rule Egypt. If it wasn't for Jean-Francois Champollion, we would not know about her existence. Hatshepsut's original place of burial, KV-20, was somewhat excavated by Howard Carter in 1903. Yes, that Howard Carter, the one who discovered King Tut's tomb. But Hatshepsut's belongings were found elsewhere. Howard Carter would also discover KV-60 in 1903. In this tomb, he would discover two female mummies, one of which was identified as Hatshepsut's wet nurse. The other mummy would go unidentified for the next 104 years when Dr. Zahi Hawass had it removed and taken to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo for testing. It was discovered that this mummy was missing a tooth, and the space in the jaw perfectly matched a molar found in a canopic box belonging to Hatshepsut. Both the mummy and the tooth technically could be DNA tested, but it would require the tooth to be destroyed. However, in 2011, the molar was identified as a lower jaw molar, whereas the mummy from KV-60 is missing a molar from its upper jaw. This casts doubts on the supposed identification. It is believed that Hatshepsut's death was caused by bone cancer due to a benzopyrene carcinogenic skin lotion that was found in her possession. According to Egyptologist James Breasted, Hatshepsut is the first great woman in history of whom we are informed. And I must agree. In many ways, her reign is viewed as going against the patriarchal system of her time. She managed to rule as regent for her stepson/nephew, which went against a system which did not allow mothers to rule on behalf of their sons. She then used this regency to create her own rule, constructing temples and monuments that celebrated her reign. This resulted in the public being able to see a woman in a powerful role. And when the oracle declared her as king, Egypt's public readily accepted this status. Egyptologist Kara Cooney states that Hatshepsut's power was given by the elite status to further their own interests. However, I fully believe that she was given this power by simply using her status as the legitimate child of Thutmose I to gain popularity amongst the masses since Thutmose III was so young. She was incredibly intelligent and probably could have used her intellect to help her. I also do not fully disagree with Kara, though. Given Hatshepsut's status as not only the legitimate heir of Thutmose I, but the regent of Thutmose III, the elites could have wanted to give her the throne in order to manipulate her to give them what they desired. Whichever way she got the throne, Hatshepsut truly is a woman that deserves to be remembered. And regardless of how Hatshepsut gained her power, she was also not shy of controversies. One controversy I remember from my childhood was depicted in a documentary featuring Egyptologist Bob Breyer. In this documentary, a piece of graffiti is shown. This graffiti contains Senenmut, the believed architect of Hatshepsut mortuary temple at Deir al-Bahari, and Hatshepsut in her pharaoh's headdress having sex. Many of the workers of her monuments believe that Senenmut was her lover, which was only amplified when he was allowed to build a tomb close to her mortuary temple. He was also allowed to put his name and image behind a door in the complex at Deir al-Bahari. I personally believe that Senenmut was just a close friend and confidant to Hatshepsut due to his role as her daughter's tutor. However, this controversy just proves that no one can escape rumors. Even people in powerful statuses will become victim to rumor and controversy eventually. And Hatshepsut was no exception to this. Until next time, where we will be discussing Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their infamous religion. Remember to comment any questions regarding this or past episodes on either the podcast's Blue Sky or Facebook pages. Also, remember that you are loved, and may the goddess Isis protect you.